Okay, so here we are in the second part of our Introduction to Table Views tutorial. So now what we are going to do in this part of the tutorial is that, let me run the project, and we are going to load up our table view with the sides, their subtitles, their images from two arrays. So let's quickly begin on that. Let me quit that and stop the project. Okay. So we are going to need two arrays, one which holds the names of the site, that's in the form of strings, and another array which holds our images that we imported in the first part for our tutorial. So these are the images that we want in our table view. Okay, so let's create the two arrays. So ns array, let's call it sites array, and let's call the second one images array. Okay, let me copy those. Wrong selection. Okay, and here we go, and this, let's set the properties for those. It's going to be the same. Save that, copy this, and paste this over here. Okay, so we have our getter methods. Now let's synthesize those two arrays. So synthesize sites array and synthesize our images array. Let's not forget our memory management, so we would like to set them nil when the view unloads. So sites array nil and images array nil as well. Okay, and let's release our arrays when our view controller is deallocated. So sites array release and images array release. Okay, we are done with our memory management. So the time when you fill up your array with objects or data is when the view is loaded. So here's where viewDelegate method comes into play. So let's create a dummy array. Let's call it sites, and let's allocate it, and we want to init with objects. And as you can see, it says over here ID. ID means any kind of object you like. It can be a view, text, images, strings, anything. In our case, it's going to be strings. So the way you represent a string is by quotations and an @ symbol at the front. So this tells the compiler that it's an NS string. Okay, so let's begin. Let me open this up, sorry. Okay, so active tuts, misspelled. Okay, active tuts, let me just copy this. Okay, active tuts, a tuts, and the way you end an NS array or any kind of collection, that is NS array, NS dictionary, NS set, the way you end them is by using a nil object at the end. So this is what tells the array that we would like to end our array right over here. So when it's compiled, the last object, that's nil, is ignored, and the vector text is considered as the last object. So there we have our dummy array. So we will fill up our sites array with the dummy array. So self.sites array, and we will set it equal to sites. So our sites array has all the 8 objects over here into its as its objects, and since we don't need our sites array right now, we can release it. So what we're doing is load up the sites array with a dummy array, and that's the sites array. Okay, so that's for the first part. And now I would like, usually I implement one more method, and this as an optional method. And if I hit dash, which means it's an instance method, and n, and let's just escape. So as you can see, there's one more method, number of sections in table view. So this returns how many sections do we have. So there's a key difference between this method and the number of rows in section. This returns how many sections do we have in a table view, while this method returns how many rows we have in a section. I just like to implement it so that I know how many sections do I have. So returns the number of sections in a table view. Okay, so this, and so now that we know that we have one section, how many rows do we want? Well, we want the rows to equal to the number of sites we have in the sites array. So the way you do that is return sites array, and we want to return the count. So what the method count does is that it returns the number of objects it has in the array. So if I just trace that, let's say number of objects in sites array, and let's set it equal to sites array count, and if I'm not wrong, it should result into 8. So let's compile our project, and well, we don't even need to look at the console because you can see over here it returns 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 rows for the 8 objects in the sites array, and we don't even require that statement. Okay, and as you can see over here, we have totally 8 rows for our table view. Okay, that looks good. And let's see what else we can do. Now we want to display this text in each row. Well, how would you do that? Well, you configure each cell in the cell for row at index path method. So configure the cell. Well, we want to know, well, the method cell for row at index path is run when each and every cell is rendered one by one. So in our case, this method is called 8 times. So we want to know which row is the table view rendering right now. So we are going to use NSU integer, and let's call it row, and this should equal to index path, which is this NS index path. It holds a few instance variables like section or row. Index path section returns what section which we are currently in, but what we are interested in is the row. So every time this method's run, we get 8 different values for our NSU integer row. Well, now that we know which row we are at, we can show the text. Well, the cell consists of 5 different types of view. Content view, let me show you. Okay, so the white background which you see over here is the content view, and let me open up UITableViewCell, and let's see the documentation, and it should be in properties. Okay, so there are 5 different types of view. An accessory view, so this is what shows the arrows on the right end of a row. There we go, accessory view. It's a view that's used typically as a control on the right side of the cell. Then there's a background view, uses the background. There's the content view. Now this is what holds all the other views, the other 4 views. There's a detail text label, returns the secondary label, and if I'm not wrong, the final one should be the image view. So this returns the image for the table cell. And sorry, there's one more view, and that's the, let's see, text view, I guess. Yeah, there it is, text label. And this is what represents the black big text. So we would like to retrieve the property text label for representing the names. Well, so let's call it cell dot, and if I hit escape and press T, there we go, there's text label. And if I use a dot and hit right escape again, let's see, there we go. Here we can set the text for the text label. Well, how would we set the text for a text label for each different row? Well, you can call sites array and every time the functions run, we can call for an object at the index, and here we return an NSU integer, and in our case it's going to be a row. Let's save this and let's run our project. Okay, we have a few errors. Object at index row. Oh, I declared this line before even the variables declared. So save this and let's rerun. One more. Expected identifier before return. Oh, sorry. I messed up once again. Okay, save this and let's run. There we go. So there we have the names of all the websites, the Touch Plus network websites, and eight cells. Okay, we have our names. So what shall we do next? Well, we would like to get our images in. Well, let's stop this, and we want this images in our table views rows. To make sure that each website gets its own image, we need to make sure that the array has the declaration of the sites and images in the same order. Well, let's begin with our images array. Let's create a dummy array for our images as well. But before we create an array, we need to have all these images in form of an UI image variable. So it's a long procedure, but let's do it. UI image, let's call it active, and the way you get the image from our resources is that you use the method UIImage image named. So this method fetches the image which has the name which we passed in is a string from the resources. So let's call it active.png. So this instance variable holds our active.png image and as an UI image. So let's do that for all the images. AE UI image named ae.png. Sorry. Okay. The next one is the last one. Last but not the least, vector UI image, not images array, image named colon, and the final one vector.png. So now we have our all the 8 images in form of an UI image. Okay, so now we would like to include all these objects or the UI images in an array. In our case, it's images array. So like the first time, let's create a dummy array. So ns array, let's call it images. Well, it's an ns array allocated and init with objects. So instead of strings, this time it's going to be the UI images that go in as objects. So let me quickly type this up. Active a audio mobile yet net photo psd vector, and last but not the least null, just so that an array can know that we end our array over here. Well, let's set our images array equal to images, and now we don't need our images array, so we can release it. So there we have our images in our images array. Now we need to configure our cell to show this array. Well, the way you do that is cell, and let's hit escape, and this time it's going to be an image view, and the image view has a property for an image. Well, you use the same method that we used over here, that's sites array object at index row, and this time it's going to be row once again. So not sites array, images array, and object at index row once again. Save this and let's reload. There we go. There we have our images, and each next to the site it belongs to. So just make sure that you have the strings and the images in the same order. But now we can begin our customization over here. Let's add two more things: accessory view and one more, the detail text. So let's quit this. Okay, and as I said you, the other two were detail text label and the another one was accessory type. So let's click accessory type and you set it equal to UITableView cell accessory. And if I write escape, there are three types of accessory views: checkmark, detail disclosure button, and disclosure indicator. So let's choose this, disclosure indicator for the first case. Let's run our project. Okay, so there you can see, there we have our small gray arrows which point over to the next view. Let's change it to something else, and let's say detail disclosure, and let's rerun, and there we go, there are the blue buttons, and the final one is the check mark, and let's rerun, and there we have it, there we have the check marks on the right hand side of our table view cell. And you may customize the accessories as you would like, but that's a different story, so we'll see about it later on. Okay, so let's set it equal to, I like the disclosure indicator better, so save it. Okay, so we have three things out of our way. Let me comment this out. Sets the text for the cell. This sets as the image view for the cell, and the final one sets the accessory view for the cell. The final one which we want is to set the detail view, detail text for the cell, and that's subtitle. Okay, so the way you do that is cell.detailTextLabel, and just like our text label property, it has text as well, and you set it equal to anything you want. Let's see what we want to do. Let's just indicate what row which we are at. So let's set it to n string, and it's going to be a string with format. Let's say this is row, and let's set it to integer, and let's say row, which shows current row which we are at, +1. We want to show +1 because the rows begin at 0 and not 1, so we count from 0 1 2 3 4, but we would like to show that this is row 1 2 3 4, so +1, and that should do it. Let's run it. Okay, so you might be surprised why we don't have our detail text label when we already have set them. Well, the main problem lies over here, the style. So let's delete the default and hit escape, and as you can see, there's a second style, subtitles. So let's choose that one and rerun. Okay, there you have it. There we have our subtitles for each row. So as you can see, there are different styles. So let's try value 1, save, reload, and there you go. There we have our detailed text labels on the right side, and let's change it to value 2, the final one. And in this case we don't have images, we just have the text labels, but in this case the detailed text label is more emphasized than the main text label, but we would like to stick with our subtitles, so save it. Okay, there we have our basic table view. Well, as I said you that the delegate methods, even though they are really useful, they are not necessary for you to implement, but if you would like to have good control over your table view, you might want to implement those methods. So let's begin with our pragma mark and table view delegate methods. Sorry. Okay, so the first method that I would like to show you is hit dash and T for the table view methods, and it's height for row at index path, and it wants us to return a CG float, that's a number. So what we do over here is return the height for each cell. So this determines the height for each row. Well, as you can see, our images quite don't fit into this table view rows because it's quite narrow. So we can increase. The default row height is 44, but after some experimentation I found that 50 suits a whole lot better. So let's build and run, and there we go. There is a lot more, much better space between the image and the separators. So you can set individual rows as well. So if we say we would like let's say if index path and the row is equal to the first row, we would like to return 100, else we would like to return 50. So this would set the height for the first row to 100 and for the second, all the rest of the rows to 50. Let's run, and there we go. So the height for the first row is 100, but the height for the rest of the rows is 50, and we don't want that, so let's just delete it, return 50. I think that's appropriate, and let's see the results. Okay, there we go, that's fine. Okay, so the second method is, let's do that dash T thing again, and the third method is title for header and section. So this sets the title for each section for the in the table view. In our case there is only one section, so this will set the title of the table header for the table view, and it wants us to return an string. So let's return, let's say we want to keep the envato tuts plus sides, and let's capitalize this S. Okay, save this and let's run. There we go. So there's our title for our header view, envato tuts plus sides, and the same goes for the footer. So there's one more method, title for footer in the section, and it wants us to return a string as well. Let's say envato rocks, and let me comment this out. So sets the title for the header and for footer. Okay, let's rerun or reload. Okay, and as you can see at the bottom, there's an envato rocks title for our footer and envato tuts plus sides for the header. That looks pretty cool for now. Okay, let me stop this. Okay, the next method which we would like to implement is, it's T. Okay, the next method is indentation. Well, what does this method do? As the name says it all, it sets the indentation for each row in the table view for rows. So if I say return, we want to indent each row 50 pixels away from the left. Let's run, and there you can see it's off the screen, so that's a lot. Let me reduce it to something more visible, 10. There we go. it has indented everything 10 pixels away from each other, but we don't want anything, so 0. That's fine. 0 looks good. Okay, there we go. The next method, and possibly the one which we'll use the most, is did select row at index path. Okay, so what this method does is, this method is run when you, let me open that, when you click or touch the row in the table view. Well, as we haven't implemented anything, nothing special happens. Well, let's implement this. So this method is run when the user taps the row on the table view, in the table view. Okay, so what I would like to do is show an UI alert. So let's say UI alert view, and let's call it alert. It's a pointer, and UI alert view. Misspelled. Okay, allocate it, and there's a big method init with title. There we go. There's a big method. So we would like to set the title that tapped row, and the message, I'm going to indent it so that it's more readable for you guys. So let's say what's gonna be the message. Well, I want to show an string, and it's going to be a string with format. Let's say you tapped, and we would like to show the name of the row that was tapped. So in this case, sites array, and object at index path dot row. So this will return which row was tapped, and this is similar to what we did on our cell for row at index path method. Who should we delegate? Well, in our case, no one's need to be in delegate, and there should be one more square bracket to add that. Okay, let's say what's going to be a cancel embed title. Let's say yes, I did. And if you would like to implement any other buttons, in our case we don't need any, so we'll set it nil and end it with a closing square bracket. Let me indent this. Okay, and we would like to show our alert, show, and release it after we are done with it. So let's run our project, and if I tap on this row, there we have it. There's our alert, tabbed row, which we set the title, and it shows which row we tapped. So you tapped A touch. Yes, I did. Let's try another one. Let's say mobile touch. There we go. That works perfectly. And this is all it takes to build an a default table view. So this is enough for the introduction. But as you can see, let's do one more thing. If I tap on a row, there's this blue, let me click over here. Okay, there's this blue highlight. Well, we want the user to know that he tapped something, but we don't want it to stay like this. Well, there's one way to do it. All you do is call the table view, and that's the table view in the framework, and we haven't created this variable. Let me stop this first. Okay, and the method that you use is deselect row at index path, and you pass in the index path. In our case, this is the index path in the method itself, and we want it to be animated. Yes, save it, rerun. So if I tap over here, you can see that it shows the tab, but the highlight disappears. So let's click on the bottom one so that you can see it clearly. Okay, click, and there we go. There the fade disappears. Well, that should be it for this tutorial. This should be enough to get you up and going with using the table views. Thank you for watching the tutorial. Thank you.